Part 1. Admiral Hex stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and looked at the holographic display with deep satisfaction. 47 warships formed a perfect sphere in the darkness of space. At the center of that sphere, like a small insect caught in a web, sat a single human vessel. The human ship was called the Perseverance. It was not a warship. It was a colony transport, a large and slow vessel designed to carry civilians from one world to another. Its engines were dark. Its shields flickered weakly. It drifted without power, waiting for death or rescue. Neither would come, only Hex and his fleet. "Report," he said, his voice calm and cold. His tactical officer, a younger named X, consulted his screens. The human vessel carries approximately 300,000 passengers, Admiral, mostly civilians, families, children. They were fleeing the border colonies when we intercepted them. "Fleeing," Hex repeated. He found the word amusing. The border colonies now belonged to the Dominion. The humans who lived there had been given a choice: submit or leave. These ones had chosen to leave. They had not gotten far. "Any military escort?" he asked. "None, Admiral. They appear to have been abandoned by their own fleet." Hex allowed himself a small smile. This was typical of younger species. They made promises they could not keep. They told their civilians that help would come, that someone would save them. And then, when the moment arrived, when the enemy fleet appeared on their sensors, the military vessels ran away and left the civilians to die. Though we're not like this. They kept their promises. When they said they would destroy you, they destroyed you. When they said they would show mercy, they showed mercy. There was honor in consistency. "Open a channel," Hex commanded. "I will speak to their captain." The communication officer worked at his station. A moment later, a holographic image appeared before Hex. It showed a human female standing on a simple bridge. She was middle-aged by human standards, with gray in her dark hair and lines around her eyes. She wore the uniform of a merchant marine captain, not a military officer. Her expression was tired but steady. "I am Admiral Hex of the Dominion Third Armada," he said. "You are surrounded. Your engines are disabled. Your shields are failing. You have no weapons capable of harming my ships. This engagement is already over. The only question that remains is how it ends." The human captain looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "I am captain of the colony transport Perseverance. I have 300,000 civilians aboard this vessel, Admiral, families, children, people who have done nothing wrong except try to find a new home." "They fled Dominion territory," Hex said. "That is crime enough." "They fled their homes because your fleet was burning them. We offered terms, they refused." Captain's expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. It was not fear. It was something else. Something Hex could not quite identify. "What do you want, Admiral?" "Surrender your vessel and all passengers. They will be processed and relocated to Dominion holding facilities. Those who cooperate will be treated humanely. Those who resist will not." "Processing," repeated. "Holding facilities. Those are very clean words for very ugly things." Hex felt a flicker of irritation. He did not enjoy being questioned by prey. "You are in no position to negotiate, Captain. You have no weapons. You have no allies. You have no hope of escape. My fleet has never failed to capture a target. This is not arrogance. This is historical fact." "Never asked." "Never. They have conquered 11 spacefaring civilizations. Each one tried to break our encirclements. Each one failed. Each failure taught us something new. Our tactics have been refined over thousands of years. Our formations are mathematically perfect. Our targeting algorithms predict every possible escape vector and close it before the enemy can react." He spread his hands, a gesture of absolute confidence. "None escape my fleet, Captain. This is simply the truth." Captain was quiet for a moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. It was not a desperate smile or a brave smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that you did not. "Admiral," she said, "are you familiar with the human game of chess?" Hex frowned. "I am not. It is a strategy game. 2 players, 2 armies, 1 board. The goal is to trap the enemy king so that it cannot move. We call this checkmate." She paused. "But there is a concept in chess that many players struggle to understand. It is called a sacrifice." "Explain." "A sacrifice is when you deliberately give up one of your pieces, even a powerful one, in order to gain a greater advantage later. You accept a loss now so that you can win later." Her smile faded, replaced by something harder. "Your 11 species, Admiral, the ones who tried to escape your encirclements, they were all trying to survive. They were playing not to lose. And humans play differently. Humans play to win, and sometimes winning requires sacrifice. Sometimes winning looks exactly like losing until the very last move." Hex stared at her. He had heard many things from many captains over many years. He had heard begging and threats and desperate bargains. He had never heard philosophy. "You are trying to confuse me," he said. "It will not work. You have nothing. No weapons, no allies, no escape routes. Your words change nothing." "Perhaps," said, "but let me ask you a question, Admiral. Your 11 species, the ones who tried to escape your fleets, what did they all have in common?" Hex considered. "They were prey," he said. "They ran, they tried to survive, they failed." "Exactly, they were prey," leaned forward slightly. "Admiral, what happens when you trap something that is not prey? What happens when the thing in your trap does not want to run?" Before Hex could answer, an alarm sounded on his bridge. His tactical officer looked up with surprise in his eyes. "Admiral, the human vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies." "What are they saying?" X listened to his earpiece. His face grew pale. "It is a repeated message, Admiral, in multiple human languages, the same phrase over and over." "What phrase?" X swallowed. "Lighthouse is lit. All ships execute Thermopylae." Hex looked back at the holographic image of Captain. She was still there, still watching him with that strange, calm expression. "What is Thermopylae?" he demanded. "It was a battle," she said. "A very long time ago on our. A small group of warriors held a narrow pass against a massive army. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They delayed the enemy long enough for their allies to prepare." "You have no allies," Hex said. "Your fleet abandoned you." Smiled again. This time there was something terrible in it. Something that made Hex feel, for the first time in many years, a small cold whisper of doubt. "Admiral," she said, "you have studied 11 species. You have learned how prey animals behave. You have perfected the mathematics of containment. But you made a mistake. You assumed that all species value the same things. All species value survival." "Most do, yes," she paused. "Humans are not most species." Another alarm sounded, then another. Hex turned to his tactical officer. "Report," he snapped. "Multiple faster-than-light emergence signatures, Admiral, inside the encirclement." Inside? That was impossible. No species could calculate an FTL exit point with such precision. The margin for error was enormous. Ships that tried to emerge inside an encirclement would be scattered across thousands of kilometers, easy targets for the waiting fleet. "Confirmed, Admiral. They are emerging at precise coordinates, extremely precise, within meters of their intended positions." On the display, new icons appeared. 1, 3, 10, 20. They were appearing in the gaps between his ships, in the blind spots where sensor coverage overlapped, in the exact positions that his formation was weakest. "What kind of ships?" Hex demanded. X stared at his screen. When he spoke, his voice was strange. "They are not warships, Admiral. They are civilian vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, personal transports. They appear to be modified, engines attached to frames, weapons bolted onto hulls." "Modified civilian ships against the Third Armada," Hex laughed, but the laugh felt hollow. They will be destroyed in seconds. Admiral, X looked up, and there was something in his eyes that Hex had never seen before. Fear. The ships are not trying to escape. They are not trying to engage at range. They are accelerating directly toward our vessels. They are ramming us. Yes, Admiral. Hex turned back to the holographic image of Captain. She was still there, still watching, still calm. You called for suicide ships, he said. You called for your own people to die. I called for volunteers, replied. There is a difference. No one volunteers to die. Humans do. Her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. When something matters enough, when someone matters enough. 300,000 people, Admiral, strangers, most of them, families, children, people who just wanted to find a new home. She paused. We are not prey, Admiral. We do not run. We do not hide. We do not surrender our own. On the display, the first human ship reached its target. It was a converted mining vessel, small and ugly and slow. It flew directly into the engine section of a destroyer. Both ships vanished in nuclear fire. Hex stared at the explosion. His perfect formation had a hole in it now. A small hole, but a hole nonetheless. Observe, Captain said softly. That is what I wanted to say to you, Admiral. You told me that none escape your fleet. I wanted to say observe, but I thought it might sound rude. She smiled one last time. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a ship to fly. My passengers are counting on me. The communication ended. The holographic image vanished. And on the tactical display, more and more human ships appeared, each one flying toward death, each one piloted by a volunteer who had chosen to die so that strangers might live. Hex watched them come, and for the first time in his long and bloody career, he felt something he had not felt in centuries. He felt afraid. Part 2. The second human ship hit its target 4 seconds after the first. It was a personal yacht, the kind of vessel that wealthy humans used for pleasure trips between planets. Someone had welded armor plates to its hull and strapped additional engines to its frame. It was ugly and awkward and completely wrong for combat. It flew directly into the sensor array of a cruiser. The explosion blinded the cruiser's targeting systems. 3 nearby ships had to adjust their positions to cover the gap. Those adjustments created new gaps. Hex watched his perfect formation begin to break apart, and he felt something cold settle into his stomach. This was wrong. This was not how battles were supposed to work. Enemies were supposed to run. Enemies were supposed to try to escape. Enemies were supposed to be predictable. These humans were not running. They were attacking, with ships that were not warships, with pilots who did not expect to survive. All ships maintain formation, he ordered. Target the incoming vessels. Destroy them before they reach us. His weapons officers obeyed. Beams of energy lanced out across the darkness, tracking the small human ships. Many of them died. Hex watched the icons vanish from his display, one by one. But there were so many of them, and they were not flying in patterns that his computers could predict. They were weaving and dodging, each pilot making individual decisions, each ship taking a different path. His targeting algorithms had been designed to predict the behavior of fleets, not individuals. They assumed that enemies would fly in formation, would follow orders, would behave rationally. These humans were not behaving rationally. They were behaving like people who had already accepted death and simply wanted to choose how it came. A cargo hauler broke through the defensive fire and slammed into the forward shields of a destroyer. The shields held, but the impact forced the destroyer to rotate, to adjust its position. Another gap opened. They are manned, X said. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. Admiral, every one of those ships has a pilot. They are not drones, they are not automated weapons. They are people. I know what they are. They are killing themselves, deliberately, for strangers. Hex did not respond. He was watching his tactical display, watching his perfect sphere become imperfect, watching the gaps multiply. The Perseverance was still sitting in the center of the formation, dark and silent, but Hex noticed that its orientation had changed slightly. Its bow was now pointing toward the largest gap in his formation. It was waiting. Captain's voice came over the open channel. She was broadcasting to everyone now, her ships and his ships alike. All Thermopylae units, this is Lighthouse. You are clear to engage at will. Make it count. Hex opened a channel to her. You are sending your people to die. They volunteered. For what? For refugees, for strangers. For the idea that some things matter more than survival. Her voice was calm, even peaceful. You asked me earlier what happens when you trap something that is not prey. I will tell you now, Admiral. What happens is that the thing in the trap does not try to escape. It tries to break the trap. It accepts the cost. The cost is too high. You cannot defeat my fleet with suicide attacks. I do not need to defeat your fleet. I only need to break your formation. I only need to create one gap large enough for my ship to escape. Hex realized what was happening. She was not trying to win. She was not trying to destroy his fleet. She was trying to create a hole, just one hole, just big enough for a colony transport to fly through. And his own tactical doctrine was working against him. His ships were designed to maintain overlapping fields of fire, to cover each other's blind spots, to form an unbreakable wall. But that wall required every ship to be in its proper position. Every time a human suicide ship forced one of his vessels to move, to rotate, to adjust, it created a new weakness. His perfect formation was being destroyed not by superior firepower, but by chaos, by unpredictability, by human pilots who did not behave like his algorithms expected. All ships close the gaps, he ordered. Tighten formation. Do not allow the transport to escape. His captains obeyed. The sphere began to contract, the ships moving closer together, the fields of fire overlapping more tightly. But this created new problems. The closer his ships were to each other, the more dangerous the suicide attacks became. A human ship that missed its target might hit a different target. An explosion that destroyed one vessel might damage another. And the humans kept coming. They came in ships that were never meant for combat, industrial tugs with welded armor, mining platforms with engines bolted to their frames, passenger shuttles with explosive charges packed into their cargo holds. Each one flew toward the fleet. Each one was piloted by someone who had made a choice. Hex watched a small shuttle weave through the defensive fire. It was fast and nimble, built for carrying a few passengers between orbital stations. Its pilot was skilled, dodging beams that should have destroyed it, slipping through gaps that should not have existed. The shuttle reached a frigate. It did not ram the frigate directly. Instead, it flew along the hull, scraping against the armor, leaving a trail of sparks. Then it detonated. The explosion was not large enough to destroy the frigate, but it was large enough to damage the frigate's maneuvering thrusters. The frigate began to drift, unable to maintain its position. Another gap opened. "Helm, get us into position," Captain said over the open channel. She was not trying to hide her plans anymore. She wanted Hex to know exactly what she was doing. "That gap is our exit. All remaining Thermopylae units focus on keeping it open." The human suicide ships changed their attack patterns. Instead of striking at random targets, they began concentrating on the ships around the gap. They were dying faster now, destroyed by focused fire, but they were also causing more damage. Every time Hex tried to close the gap, another human ship flew into the way. He could see the mathematics now. He could see what Captain had done. She had not tried to destroy his fleet. She had identified the weakest point in his formation and concentrated all her forces on that single point. She was trading lives for position. She was buying her escape with blood. Admiral X's voice was tense. "The transport's engines are coming online." Hex looked at the display. The Perseverance was no longer dark. Its engines were glowing with power. Its shields were strengthening. It had been playing dead, conserving energy, waiting for this moment. "They were never disabled," Hex said. "It was a trick." "Yes, Admiral. They were waiting for us to form up around them. They wanted us to create the perfect sphere. They wanted to be surrounded." "Yes, Admiral." Hex felt something strange. It took him a moment to identify it. It was respect. He hated these humans. He wanted them dead. But he could not help admiring what they had done. They had taken his greatest strength and turned it into a weakness. They had used his own tactics against him. The Perseverance began to accelerate. It was a big ship, slow to start, but once it got moving, it would be difficult to stop. It was heading directly for the gap. "All ships concentrate fire on the transport," Hex ordered. "Ignore the suicide ships. Destroy the transport." His weapons officers obeyed. Beams of energy reached out toward the Perseverance. But the human suicide ships were still coming. They flew into the beams, blocking them, dying so that the transport could live. Each ship that died bought the Perseverance another second, another meter, another chance. A young human in a converted mining vessel flew directly into the beam that was targeting the Perseverance engines. The beam cut through the mining vessel like paper. The pilot died instantly. But the beam lost its lock on the transport, had to reacquire, had to adjust. Those few seconds were enough. The Perseverance reached the gap. It was going to escape. "No," Hex said. He turned to his helm officer. "Move us into position. Block the gap with the eternal judgment itself." "Admiral, if we move out of position, we will disrupt the formation further." "Do it now." The flagship began to move. It was the largest ship in the fleet, a massive vessel of war and death. It would fill the gap. It would block the transport's escape. It would end this. But Captain had anticipated this. She had been waiting for it. 3 more human ships appeared on the sensors. They had been holding back, hiding in the debris field created by the earlier explosions. They were not heading for the gap. They were heading for the eternal judgment. "Admiral, incoming vessels. They are targeting our engines." Hex watched them come. 3 small ships flying in perfect formation, aimed at his flagship's most vulnerable point. If they hit his engines, the eternal judgment would be crippled. It would drift out of control. The gap would remain open. He had to make a choice. He could shoot down the suicide ships and let the transport escape, or he could block the gap and let the suicide ships hit his engines. There was no good option. There was only loss. "Destroy the incoming ships," he ordered. The weapons turned away from the transport. They fired at the 3 small vessels flying toward the flagship. The first ship died. The second ship died. The third ship got through. It hit the Eternal Judgment's engine section with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The flagship shuddered. Alarms screamed. Hex grabbed the edge of his console to keep from falling. When he looked up, the Perseverance was gone. It had jumped to faster-than-light speed. 300,000 humans had escaped. Around him, the battlefield fell silent. The human suicide ships had stopped coming. The battle was over. Hex stared at the empty space where the transport had been. He had lost 17 ships. He had lost thousands of crew members. He had lost a battle that he should have won easily. And all around him, drifting in the wreckage, were the escape pods of human pilots, the few who had survived their suicide runs. They were broadcasting a simple message, over and over, in calm and steady voices. "Worth it," they said, "worth it." Hex did not understand. He could not understand. They had died for strangers. They had given everything for people they had never met. He needed answers. He needed to understand how this was possible. "Bring me one of those pilots," he ordered, "alive." Part 3. They found her drifting in an escape pod near the wreckage of her ship. She was young by human standards, perhaps 25 years old. Her vessel had been a passenger shuttle, the kind used for short trips between space stations. She had flown it directly into a frigate's shield generator, crippling the ship's defenses. Then, in the seconds before impact, she had ejected. She should have died. The odds of surviving such a maneuver were very small. But humans, Hex was learning, did not think about odds the way other species did. The guards brought her to his private chamber, a room of dark metal and cold light. She walked without help, though burns covered nearly half her body. Her left arm hung useless at her side. She was clearly in great pain. She did not show it. "Sit," Hex said, gesturing to a chair across from his own. She looked at the chair for a moment, then she sat. Her movements were careful, deliberate. She was conserving her strength. She knew she was dying. "What is your name?" Hex asked. "Sarah. You were a pilot in the suicide attack." "We called it Thermopylae." A small smile crossed her burned face. "But yes, suicide attack works too." Hex studied her. He had interrogated many prisoners over his long career. He knew how to read fear, how to identify weakness, how to break a mind. This human showed none of the signs he expected. She was calm. She was focused. She was dying, and she did not seem to care. "Why?" he asked. "Why what? Why did you do it? Why did you fly your ship into my fleet? Why did you choose to die?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. She looked at Hex with eyes that were tired but steady. "That is a big question. I am not sure you will understand the answer." "Try." She took a slow breath. The motion clearly hurt her. On the Perseverance there were 300,000 people. I did not know any of them, not one. They were strangers, refugees from the border colonies, families who had lost their homes, children who had lost their futures. She paused. But they were human, and that was enough. Enough for what? Enough to die for. Hex shook his head. "That makes no sense. Your species values individual survival. Your evolutionary history, your social structures, your legal systems, all of them prioritize the preservation of the self. Why would you sacrifice yourself for strangers?" "Because we are more than our evolutionary history." Sarah shifted in her chair, wincing at the movement. "You have studied 11 species, Admiral. You have conquered civilizations. You have built a perfect military doctrine based on the assumption that all intelligent beings behave rationally, that they want to survive, that they will run when they are trapped." "Yes." "But you never asked yourself why some species do not run. You never considered that there might be something more powerful than the fear of death." "What could be more powerful than the fear of death?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "My grandmother lived through a war on Earth, a very old war before we reached the stars. Her city was destroyed. Her family was killed. She survived only because a stranger pulled her from the rubble, a man she had never met. He died saving her. And you remember this." "I remember what she told me. She said that the man who saved her did not know her name. He did not know if she was worth saving. He just saw a child in danger and he acted. He gave his life for a stranger because he believed that human beings should protect each other. That was his meaning. That was his purpose." Hex frowned. "Purpose? You do not understand that word, do you?" Sarah looked at him with something like pity. "You have conquered 11 species. You have built an empire. You have killed millions. And none of it has given you purpose. You are still empty. You are still searching. You thought that victory would fill the void inside you, but it never does. You presume to know what I feel. I know what I saw. When I was flying toward your fleet, I watched your ships through my sensors. They were perfect. Their formations were precise. Their tactics were flawless, and they were terrified." She paused. "You were winning, and you were still afraid, because you knew that something was wrong. You knew that we were not behaving the way we were supposed to behave, and that frightened you more than any weapon could." Hex said nothing. He did not want to admit that she was right. "Humans are afraid too," Sarah continued. "Every pilot in that attack was terrified. I was terrified, but we were afraid of something different than you. We were not afraid of death. We were afraid of failing. We were afraid that we would not be able to save those people. We were afraid that our lives would mean nothing. And dying gave your lives meaning. Dying for something gave our lives meaning. There is a difference. She coughed, and there was blood in it. She did not seem surprised. You asked me why I did it, why I flew my ship into your fleet. The answer is simple. I wanted my life to matter. I wanted to leave something behind. I wanted to know that when I was gone, the universe would be slightly better because I had existed. And killing yourself for strangers accomplishes this. Saving strangers accomplishes this. The dying was just the price. She looked at him steadily. You have never paid that price, Admiral. You have never loved anything enough to die for it. And that is why you will never understand us. That is why you will never defeat us. Hex felt anger rising in his chest. I have defeated you. Your suicide ships are destroyed. Your pilots are dead. Your fleet is scattered. And 300,000 humans are free. Sarah smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was real. We did not fight to defeat you, Admiral. We fought to save them, and we succeeded. Every pilot who died today died knowing that they had won, that their sacrifice meant something, that their families would remember them as heroes. Heroes? Hex spat the word. You call dying for nothing heroic. We did not die for nothing. We died for everything. For the idea that strangers deserve protection, for the belief that human lives have value, for the hope that someday, somewhere, someone will do the same for the people we love. She paused. That is what you do not understand. We are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for each other, and that makes us stronger than you can imagine. Hex stood. He walked to the window and looked out at the debris field that had once been his perfect formation. 17 ships destroyed, thousands of his crew dead. And for what? A transport full of refugees. You have cost me greatly, he said quietly. I know. I should kill you. I should make an example of you. I should show my fleet what happens to those who defy the Dominion. You could, Sarah's voice was calm, but it would not change anything. We would still have one. Those people would still be free, and your fleet would still know that they were beaten by volunteers in garbage ships. Hex turned back to face her. You are dying. Yes. Does that not frighten you? Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Her burned face was peaceful. Her tired eyes were steady. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but certain. I am not afraid of dying, Admiral. I am only afraid of dying without meaning. And today, my death has meaning. Today, 300,000 people will live because I was willing to die. That is all I ever wanted. That is all any of us ever wanted. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. You will face us again, she whispered. You will come to our worlds with your perfect formations and your mathematical certainty, and you will find more volunteers, more people willing to pay the price, more humans who believe that some things are worth dying for. And what will I do then? That is up to you. A small smile crossed her face. But I hope you will remember this day. I hope you will remember that we are not prey. We do not run. We do not surrender. We fight for each other, even when there is no hope of winning, even when the cost is everything. She took one last breath. That is what makes us human, she said. That is what makes us dangerous. That is what makes us free. And then she was gone. Hex stood alone in the silence of his chamber. He looked at the young woman who had him, who had helped destroy 17 of his ships, who had died with a smile on her face. He did not understand her. He did not understand any of them. But he knew, with cold certainty, that he had to make a choice. He could continue to fight these humans, to throw his fleets against their worlds, to try to break their will. Or he could accept that he had encountered something new, something that his 1,000 years of conquest had not prepared him for, a species that did not fear death, a species that found meaning in sacrifice, a species that fought not for survival but for something greater. He made his decision. When he returned to the bridge, his officers looked at him with questions in their eyes. They wanted to know what would happen next. They wanted orders. They wanted certainty. "Set course for Dominion space," he said quietly. "We are withdrawing." Admiral X looked surprised. "We have more than enough ships to continue the campaign. We could." "No." Hex sat in his command chair and looked at the tactical display, the debris field, the floating escape pods still broadcasting their simple message, the empty space where the Perseverance had been. "The humans are not like the others. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They do not value what we value. Then how do we defeat them?" Hex was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was heavy with something that might have been respect. "I do not know if we can." The flagship turned away from the battlefield. The surviving ships followed. They left behind the wreckage of 17 vessels and the bodies of those who had crewed them. And in the escape pods, the human survivors continued to broadcast their message. Not calls for help, not pleas for mercy, just 2 words repeated over and over in voices that were calm and steady and certain. "Worth it." The Dominion fleet disappeared into the darkness between stars. The humans waited for rescue. And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds and 1,000 ships, the story began to spread. The story of a colony transport that should have been captured. The story of volunteers who flew garbage ships into a perfect fleet. The story of a species that did not run, did not hide, did not surrender. The story of humans. 300,000 refugees arrived safely at their destination. They built new homes. They raised families. They remembered the names of those who had died for them. And they told their children and their children's children that some things are worth dying for, that strangers are worth protecting, that the measure of a species is not how it treats its powerful, but how it treats its vulnerable. Admiral Hex filed his report with the Dominion High Command. It was simple and direct. Do not engage human civilians. Do not blockade human vessels. Do not assume human tactics will follow rational self-interest. They do not fight like prey. They fight like something far more dangerous. They fight like creatures who have already accepted death and simply want to make it mean something. The report ended with a recommendation. Find another enemy. These humans are not worth the cost. The High Command disagreed. They sent more fleets. They lost more ships. They began to understand. Humans were not prey. Humans were something new. And in the end, after many battles and many losses, the Dominion learned the same lesson that Admiral Hex had learned in the wreckage of his perfect formation. Some species fight for survival. Some species fight for territory. Humans fight for each other. And that makes all the difference.